Have you ever felt like there is potential for you and inside of a group? Or perhaps there is more than meets the eye with your teammates? This is At the Root of Knowledge, and in this episode, we're going to be talking about teamwork.
Hello and welcome to At the Root of Knowledge, where we discuss timeless topics. Through conversation, we try to identify underlying principles and assumptions beneath many of mankind's ideas and beliefs. All this so we can find the truth and share what we learn with you. Please keep in mind that we are not experts. Just like you, we're here to learn. My name's Daniel Sheck, and I'm joined in the studio with Philip Barzik. We're going to be talking about how to be a team player today. Good morning. Oh, well, I guess it's afternoon. Good afternoon, Phil.
Good afternoon, Daniel. How are you?
I am fantastic, my man. How are you doing?
I'm doing well enough. So, being a team player or succeeding as a team, what are some of the components of that, do you think?
Being a team player?
Yes.
Well, I think, are you talking about from an individual perspective, like as coming into a team?
Yes, I mean, being a team player, you visualize your role as a team player.
Okay.
Some of the aspects that you want to look for in yourself and other people who want to be team players. The one thing that comes to mind, well, a few things come to mind for me.
Mm-hmm.
You have selflessness.
Right.
The ability to put the team's success above your own. So an application for that might be you're on a football team and you're not in the starting lineup. You're a backup for the quarterback. You still have a very vital role. You practice with the team. You're training the team,
Mm-hmm.
but you aren't necessarily seeing the playing time for it. You're not seeing the reward.
I think what you just said, that component you mentioned, kind of ties in with what I think is the most important part coming into a team.
And what would that be?
Arguably. To identify what the objective is.
Identify with the objective or identify what the objective?
What the objective is and determine whether or not that you're willing to actually focus your energy on the objective of the team. So let's say, for example, you're on a market research team.
Okay.
And, the purpose of the team is to figure out what people are buying, and where people are willing to put their money. Well, if you're joining this team, you got to identify that that's what it is and determine whether or not you're willing to make that your calling, make that your objective for being on the team, if that makes sense.
Yes, and a component of doing that is letting go of any other objectives that you might have.
Or not
being
latching
able
on
to let go to them.
Yeah, or not latching on to them in the first place. Because I think the reason we have teams, the biggest reason, and this may just be my opinion, is, to go after a common objective. Determine something. What's the team there for? You know what I mean? Identify that. And then that way everybody can come in focused on that, whether it's sports, whether it's a work environment, school project. What's the objective? If you got a school project, just gonna talk for a minute here. If you got like a school project and you're in college, what's your team's objective? Like I've been on school projects before where our objective was, let's make our project the coolest one, the one with the most wow factor. I've been on teams where the objective is just meet the criteria and produce something that meets all the criteria adequately.
So just get it done.
Mm-hmm. I've been on where there is no team objective and everybody's doing their own thing. Everybody wants to do their own cool little thing that they're interested in, and there's no collaboration. But I found the most fulfillment and most success has come out of teams where we had a common objective. Like this last year when I was in school, my final team project was we were to make a station for sorting parts, and really what we wanted was something that we used our idea was we were all going to bring to the table our unique talents and abilities, and we actually got a sponsor for the project from two of the members' company, and we came in, like, we machined the parts. We went way beyond what everybody else did. I mean, we fell short in a lot of areas where other people excelled us, but as far as the actual project, we had, we got cylinders. We used pretty much, we resourced everything from a machine shop to make this sorting station. Everyone else was using Legos and kits and stuff, which was fine because they didn't care. But I had so much fun with that project just because it was, that's what we wanted to do. We're like, let's do something that is challenging and that will require us to be resourceful and actually, create from scratch.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe
so
that doesn't.
In that group, there was a certain amount of cohesiveness between all of you then.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. And when you're saying it was a group project, was there a leader to the group project? Because the thing about when you mention teams and groups and corporations is they all have a leader who's decides what the cause is.
Right.
And Simon Sinek mentions this a lot in his book Start With Why. He talks about how the importance of a leader and how leaders inspire their following so well, certain leaders at least, is that they have a reason why they're doing what they're doing.
Right.
And for instance, you mentioned your group project. You guys had a reason that you guys wanted to make the coolest project with the biggest wow factor, or you guys just wanted to get by with a passing grade, whatever the reason was. Who was establishing those reasons?
It wasn't me. Well, I guess we came together and kind of decided, and some of it was not officially written up until later in the documentation for this particular project. And we did have a leader, so to speak. I would say Pete, my classmate, more or less took charge of most of it. But we kind of did what I've seen a lot of successful teams do, which is divide and conquer. Let people manage themselves. But I do agree with you. You need some sort of leadership.
Yes. When with that statement, divide and conquer, it promotes the self-reliance of you're each bringing something to the table, and you're each going to fulfill the need that you're there for
with your resources.
And that, I think that sums up another area of what a team player is. You bring to the table a certain set of skills, and that set of skills is what you use to accomplish the goal.
Right.
Or at least bring the group closer to the goal.
Right. Yeah, I think you I think that's correct. Like where I work, we've got a team. I always call it the Knox team. And everybody's got their unique thing. Even people with the same job title. Some people are more gifted with some things than others. Like we've got some people that are just the salesman, for example. They're just people, you know what I mean? Like they're really good with
Very
with talking to
charismatic.
people. Yeah, charismatic. You know, they never ever like let the how do I put this? They never convey negative emotions. You know, they never drain energy. You know what I mean? They're very good at doing that, and they're very good at talking to people and understanding people, and that's what they do. And then we've got people on the coordination side, which are just laser focused on figuring stuff out technically, yes or no, and you know, sorting things out, figuring out how long stuff going to take. You know, they're not necessarily so much worried about I don't know how to put this, but they're very good at, you know, just making stuff work. And that's just what they do. And then you got the service guys, and, you know, they're good at figuring stuff out. You know, they're good at, I don't know, technically proficient, you know. And then you've got the managers who are good at understanding people and knowing everybody's needs and pretty much keeping the company morale up. And then you got the leaders inside the company, which look forward and they go like, okay, where do we need to focus our energy? How is this team going to have to change to keep in line in the future? I don't know if this example perfectly describes what I'm trying to say, but, you know, if it wasn't for everybody's unique contribution, the team would fail if everybody did the same thing, you know? I mean, the same goes for, like, basketball
Well,
and
yes, but
baseball or whatever.
there's a in that example there's a level of personality that you have to look at there too.
Yes.
Someone who's very good at listening and understanding someone and helping them to fill their needs in a managerial role might not be as good in a sales role where they have to tell a customer about a product and sell it to them.
Right.
In the same way that a salesperson who's very good with people might get very easily frustrated with a machine when it stops working.
Right.
In a service role.
Yeah,
And
totally different jobs.
there's a level of, like I said, personality there with your levels of introversion and extroversion and competence and such.
Yeah, I mean, you look, yeah, exactly. Just going with the example of my company, because that's the one I'm most familiar with. Personalities are way different. Now, not necessarily way different, but the general vibe of the service is just super laid back. And I don't know how to describe it. They're just, it's very, they're more like reserved. They're definitely more reserved is the word I would use to describe a service. Go ahead.
Sorry, if my experience in a similar role with service and sales and managers and stuff is anything to go off of, I'll say. You are right that the service is more laid back, and I'd say they have the mindset of, we'll take our time doing it, but we'll do it right.
Right, exactly.
We'll get it done right.
Yep, and that's
and
a good.
The salespeople are more, let's get it done quickly. The
window's shorter with sales.
Yes, and that it's not to say
I feel
that
like I don't know.
that
I don't know
it's
anything
bad
about sales.
that one is superior in the other. It's each individual role that you're looking at, and in a sales role, you have to look at. You have a certain frame for where the customers, their interest is piqued in buying something in a very small frame.
Mm-hmm.
And whereas in a service role, you have a more time, I'll say, to work with things, and you're working with things as opposed to people. And things can be sometimes more predictable than people. Sometimes they can be more unpredictable than people.
Yes, totally different working with things versus working with people. Yeah, I mean, I don't want to overtalk because I know experts in sales that would talk my head off. I'm not an expert at anything, really. Not much of anything, anyway. But that's just what I pick up, is exactly what you said. Sales is usually more, let's get it done. Service is more, let's just do it right, you know, and then if you need to come back, just say I need to come back tomorrow. Don't rush things through.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, that's just an example of, and that's not to say there's strict boundaries. You know what I mean? Like, that's not to say someone in service couldn't sell something, or someone just like you take like a soccer analogy, like your goalie's generally good at being a goalie. It's not like they have to focus all their time on being being a forward. You know what I mean?
Or being a good defender necessarily.
Yeah. Just like being fullback, you don't have to be great with charging with the ball and stuff like that. You're more or less just stopping people. But that doesn't mean a fullback can't bring the ball up to the front of the field if it makes sense to do that.
No, it doesn't. But in the same way,
or a service guy can't take an opportunity to sell a product.
Right. You're exactly right there, but you do see the most talented people in going with the soccer analogy. You see the most talented people playing in the midfield, where they can play offense and defense.
Right.
But they also are delegated the most responsibility, because they're responsible for backing up the offense when they have the ball, and when they don't have the ball, they're also responsible for coming back and supporting the defense. And otherwise, if they don't, the entire team breaks down, the formation breaks down, and you wind up losing.
Yeah, I played halfback on and off. I was right fullback from 7th grade all the way to senior year, right fullback. Where are you going to go? Don't have to worry about it. I'm right fullback. But I played, halfback a little bit, especially when we were short on players. Man, that's a hard one, because there's just so much running. I mean, in soccer, you're pretty much running whatever you're in. I mean, that's any sport, I'm sure, but there's a lot in soccer, especially if you're halfback. It's just like, because, it takes 3 seconds for the ball to get from one end of the field to the other, and you're responsible for both ends, like you said.
Right.
Just pointing that out. Those people that are good at soccer, you have my heart. I was never good at it. Never good at soccer. I played, but I was never good at it. I always had a hard time. Very hard time. Some of it was probably the hard time was not being a good enough team player, I would say. Not being verbal enough with my needs, and letting my pride get in the way of taking orders from team captains, because, I was not a good soccer player. I was not good. You're much better at playing soccer than I was. But, so I always looked up to the team captains, and then by the time I was in sophomore, junior year, I was like, yeah, I'm going to be a team captain, just kind of expected it, because that's how it worked. No. It was younger people, because I was the only senior, and when I played senior year and when I was junior, I feel like there might have been one other junior. No, I might have been the only junior and senior when I played junior year, and the captains were younger. So in my arrogance and inability I didn't listen anywhere near well enough to the other team players. I let my pride get in my way a lot.
Mm-hmm.
And it was even worse with basketball. I hated getting yelled at.
Yeah. I mean, in sports in general, there's a certain amount of, I'll say, team chemistry that has to, for a team to be successful, there's a certain amount of chemistry that has to be there between the players. And more often than not, what I've seen is players separating into their individual groups, where you'll have this group of friends over here and this group of friends over here. And most of the time they have a hard time coming together as a team. And I see that a lot as being the breakdown in the team, especially in a scenario where you're trying to be the best team and go win a whatever you're trying to
tournament,
win, a tournament, a championship, whatever. it comes down to how much each person's willing to sacrifice for the other. You talk about the weakest link. Sometimes that weakest link is really just the bond between players.
Mm-hmm. Oh, I think that in my people listening who played soccer, just saying what I think, who played soccer with me. Yeah, I think the team morale was the weak link for when I played soccer, because I think that was the biggest limiting factor, the team bond.
Mm-hmm.
Like I wasn't.
And when you have a really strong bond, it becomes like I'll say like a brotherhood where, and sometimes there has to be certain events that happen for that bond to occur.
Mm-hmm. You have to be tried.
Yes,
You have to be tested.
That's exactly what I mean. And I read this in, I believe it was The Culture Code by Daniel Coyle. He was talking about the Navy SEALs and their I forget what it's called. Their extensive training that they have to go through once they make it to the Navy SEAL program and into it. They actually have to go to it's a telephone pole drill where they all hold a telephone pole above their heads, and they have to do certain exercises with it. It's one of them. They all have to hold the telephone pole while doing sit-ups, or the other one, like, they have to go through an obstacle course while they all hold it above their heads.
Mm-hmm.
And of course it's extremely hard, because as soon as you stop holding your portion a little bit, someone else has to compensate for it. Or if you're the person in the front and you make a slight turn, that means the person in the back makes a drastic turn.
Right.
So, and that's a really good analogy for teamwork in general, is that when you have a team that's so good at being able to compensate for each other, is that's why the Navy SEALs are so revered, I believe. And another thing, referencing the Navy SEALs, is I can't remember who Daniel Coyle interviewed, which one of the Navy SEALs he did, but the one that he interviewed, he was talking about what it takes to become a Navy SEAL and what they look for in a Navy SEAL. And he was saying how they aren't looking for the strongest person, they aren't looking for the most muscular person, the person with the most expertise in explosives or in stealth operations or whatever. They're looking for the person who, when they have nothing left to give, when they've spent every last bit of their energy, they still have enough energy to pick the person up next to them up.
Right.
That's the person they look for. And I think that exemplifies what a team player is.
Yeah. Well, I mean, yeah, there are a lot of examples from history, from, Medal of Honor winners, and a lot of people that never got recognized, probably, 100 times more the people that, it's insane thinking about, because that wasn't, when I was preparing for this, that wasn't even something I was thinking about, was the military. But when you think about it, that's a pretty, it's a blood bond. You meet people from the military, and it has a profound effect on their life for a lot of people.
Oh yes, and they you never meet a military person who's, at least I have never met a military person who's hasn't had that bond, that brotherhood, that companionship with their fellow Marines or fellow Navy SEALs. And I think it is the group suffering that the group comes together, and it makes their weakest link stronger because of it.
Right. They compensate for each other's weaknesses.
Yes.
I wasn't even thinking about that, but that's yeah, I mean, I've met plenty of Marines and stuff, and they meet another Marine, and it's like, There's like
It's like
an
they've known each
unspoken
other.
connection. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And you see that sometimes even when it's not Marines, just people who have served in the military.
Mm-hmm.
In general, you see that. And sometimes it's not exclusive to just the military either. I've seen people in law enforcement who have that unspoken bond too.
Maybe it's because there's a reason that ties them together or something.
That's a very, very good point. It could be.
Like they had a purpose, they have a mission, have.
They
you know,
have.
They devoted their lives to something.
Exactly. And
in
they
common.
meet someone else who has that same vision. And they know it because they're dedicated. And I think why the military, in particular the Marines or the Navy SEALs, is such a profound example is because of the commitment you have to have.
Right.
It's not something that you can get into by giving just enough effort. You either give your entire self to it and everything you have, and even then you might not make it, or that's it. There's no middle ground where you can
Slack off
and kind of get into it. It's all or nothing.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, so that bond between, there's obviously a reason, you know. If I understand how big organizations, you know, like the military work at all, if I understand that, I would think that there would be a reason for why they operate like that. There's a utility to having that sort of bond and having those sort of people in there. You know, so what was I saying? Teamwork makes the dream work.
Yeah, I mean, one of the other things mentioned by that Navy SEAL who was being interviewed was that they one of the reasons that they do the telephone pole workout, I'll say, is because it along with boosting the team chemistry and morale, and you get to see the people who have nothing left but still can, you know, pick up the person next to them, or at least pick up their slack. It builds the bond so much tighter because they now know, I'll use the word tendencies. They know their tendencies.
And the other people's
they
limits.
know where they're strongest and where they're weakest. And they've seen it. And the Navy SEALs, at least, prepare for the absolute worst. There was a story he told about this one mission where I believe it was some Middle Eastern country. They were gonna fly in and rappel down from a helicopter, and it was gonna be dark, and there wasn't gonna be a way to get them out after they had started after they had rappelled down. They weren't gonna be able to get back up to the helicopter, and they were gonna have to escape on foot and get a vehicle.
Right.
And so their leading officer kept telling their commanding officer who was overseeing the operation that he didn't like the plan, that he wanted to change some things about it because the helicopter wasn't going to be reliable enough. Something about it, he just felt, he had the intuition that it was something bad was going to happen. And no matter what he did, the commanding officer just denied him. And you could look at that from a sports perspective. That's the team captain coming to the coach and saying, "Hey, this isn't working. This is not working. We need to change this." And the coach doesn't do anything.
Right.
Same situation here. So what he prepared the entire team. He had the entire team go extensively into their procedures for if there was a helicopter crash, if there was a malfunction with something on the helicopter, and something, I don't think something happened, but I believe something happened on a later mission, and because they had prepared for it in that mission, the entire operation that they were in when the helicopter did have problems still went smooth as pudding.
Because they were ready for it.
Yes, and well, because of the team leader and everyone's willingness to fulfill their roles.
Talk about team leaders. I think we could do an entire episode on just team leaders. But
You could, definitely. But we're talking about teams being a team player, and it no matter if you're talking about a team, you have the players, you have the leaders, it's always involved with it.
What do
They
you
go
think
hand in hand.
sets, or is there anything that sets, should set, does set? What are your thoughts on the difference between, just one team player versus a specific team leader?
Okay. A team leader versus a team player. What sets them apart?
What sets them apart? Is there anything that sets them apart? Other than,
I would say there's a couple things that you have to, there's a couple qualifications you have to meet to be a leader.
Mm-hmm.
One of them is being a team player.
Right.
If you're not a team player, I don't think you can be an effective leader. But one of the other things I would say is you have to be able to inspire people. And that can be a very hard thing to do. Especially if the team, for instance, a sports team has just come off of a big loss, it can be very hard to inspire people. And in that situation, I would say you have to remind them of the bigger picture. And I'll use an example from the San Antonio Spurs, a professional basketball team. Their coach, Greg Popovich, he was in an interview, he was talking about they had just come off of a very, very disappointing loss in the NBA Finals, and he talked about his process for reviving, I'll say, his team after such a deflating loss, and it was interesting that the first thing he did was he didn't even address the loss. He didn't yell at his players, tell them what they did wrong. He went and he went into the locker room, didn't even talk to any of his players. Went to the restaurant where they had the hotel and restaurant where they were going to be eating that evening, and he just started setting up everything for them. They did all the work for them, and the entire evening didn't speak about the game to them. But what he did instead was ask them personal questions about what was going on in their lives, their families, what they're looking forward to, and everything. And then the next day when they then he went over it with them, and it's interesting that he did that first. And my thoughts for why he did that was we've had a separate conversation about this. When you make a mistake and or you've come into a situation where you're losing at something, the last thing you want to hear is somebody criticizing you about everything you're doing wrong.
Right.
And I believe that he knew just that and took advantage of that situation and said, I'm not going to criticize my team. I'm not going to lay it all out what they're doing wrong. Instead, I'm going to talk to them as someone who's not their coach, as someone who just has a different kind of bond with them. So I would say that's one area, is that for being a really good leader, is you got to have more than just a teammate bond.
You got to have a personal
bond, and you have to want to be a role model for them.
Yes, you wanna set the example.
Correct. Another thing I would say for a team leader is you do have to get on people at times, though. Especially, I'll use an example from when I played soccer in high school. I showed up late one time to a game, and odds are I wasn't gonna play anyway, but I still should have been there on time. You know, that's your commitment as a player on that team, is to be at every practice,
Reliable, yeah.
at every game, every time there's a team meeting, team get together, anything. Your commitment to being on that team, whether you play the entire game or none of the game, is to be there.
Mm-hmm.
You are part of that team. And I was late. I probably got there 5 to 10 minutes before game time. And the team captain pulled me aside, and he had a talk with me. He said, "Why are you late?" Like, he just wanted flat out ask me, "Why are you late?" Like, got on my case about it. He said, "Don't let this happen again. If you let this happen again, I'm going to have to bring it up to coach, and there's going to be some kind of repercussion for it." And I think that's exactly what a team leader has to do. You know, in like certain times, if someone makes a mistake, you have to let it slide. You have to, you know, be there, be supportive of them. But in other times, like showing up late for something, like, you have to ask them why. And if it's not a valid reason, which mine was, I wound up sleeping late. I slept in too late and had forgotten that I had a game that morning. And that's not really a valid excuse. So in that scenario, you have to get on the player and tell him, you got to lay down the law that this isn't going to happen again. If it does, then you might be off the team. And
Right.
some teams are like that. I would imagine the Navy SEALs, if someone just didn't show up one day, you might not be allowed to show your face again.
Yeah.
You might have someone banging on your door that day.
Yeah, you got to contribute if you're going to be part of the team. And I think that's what really shows, you know, the people who are in it versus the people who aren't. Is the people that are willing to do what they committed to do. A lot of times it's the simplest stuff.
Mm-hmm. Most definitely. I mean, going back to when I played soccer in high school, like, that was the only time that I showed up late, and I felt bad about it. I felt really bad about it. Not even, like, it wasn't even, like, after the captain had the talk with me, before it showing up, I just felt bad.
Mm-hmm.
Like, I felt bad going there. It was like, if I wasn't here on time, why did I even show up?
Right.
And I tried extremely hard to make the starting lineup for that team. I never did. And that was disappointing, I'll say. But I did fulfill my role to the best of my ability while I was on that team. You know, I trained every bit as hard as every single one of the players on the team. Was at every practice, you know, constantly working with the players, playing against them. And like, that was my commitment. That was all of our commitments. We were committed to the team. It was something bigger than ourselves.
Right. It's not like we're just here to have fun, or we're just here to get better at something, or we're just here to have something to you know, work on and do. You know, it's more than that. You know, people are depending on you, and you had that in the forefront of your mind when you showed up. You know, you were there for a purpose. You know, and it wasn't about just you.
Correct?
Like, you were there for an objective.
Yes, sir. That's exactly what we were there for.
Yeah. I'm in a choir, and that's
That's a team of sorts.
It's definitely a team, and we have probably the best leader we could ask for, in my opinion, for a choir anyway. Yes, Travis Yeager. I hope he wants the publicity. Anyways, he is a fantastic choir director, absolutely phenomenal choir director. Yeah.
Let me ask you this, because one thing I believe is that a good team leader knows when to push his team to the limit. You mentioned Travis Yeager being a very good choir leader and probably the best you could have. Does he push you to your limits?
Mm-hmm. Oh, yeah.
That's good. That's very good.
To our limits. I mean, it's singing, you know. Definitely. Is it Marine Corps intense? I don't think so. But
It doesn't have to be Marine Corps intense.
when I say push us to our limits,
but he's constantly challenging you to be
Yes.
better.
yes, very much so. And I'm not very good. I'm not a vocalist. My fiance is much better than I am. But yes, he's making us sing more difficult pieces all the time. You know, especially when like Holy Week, that's like playoffs week, you know. It gets intense, you know, always more
So
difficult
then Easter
pieces.
Sunday is your championship.
Yeah. More like Holy Saturday. But he he'll and one thing I'm grateful for, even though it was, kind of off putting at the time, he's poked at me like, sing this again. And I so nervous, like singing in front of the entire choir by myself.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, that's exactly what he should do. You know, like you gotta be comfortable with where you're at, and everyone else has to be too. You know, you
And
can't
everyone
just
has
sit
to
there
know
and
where
hide.
you're at.
Yeah,
They all got to know where you're at, and that it's not exclusive to singing. There's times where it's like, I'll go back to soccer again. It's like, hey, each one of us individually are gonna run a timed lap, and or sometimes it was as a group, like we're all gonna run a half-mile lap. And when you finish, he gave you a time, and at the end of the workout, everybody had to say their time. And I may have mentioned this before, but it wasn't about being the
who's
first
better?
one.
Yeah,
It wasn't about who's better. It wasn't about being the first one done. It was about consistent improvement.
right.
It was about making your time better, being better than who you were.
Right. Because if you compare yourself to someone else, you're playing a stupid game.
Right.
Comparing yourself to yourself. Not saying you can't use other people for reference at all, but if you compare yourself to yourself, it's a lot easier to make improvements and to know where work needs to be done.
Correct. And we've talked extensively about that in our Envy podcast.
Yeah. Focus on you. Don't worry about where everyone else is at. No, that doesn't mean you shouldn't use them as reference. I'm not saying
No.
ignore where everyone else is at, but when
Right.
it comes
or disregard everyone else.
but when it comes to evaluating your performance, everyone else just serves as reference. That's because they're not. It's not like it's gonna make any difference on where you are or where you should be, necessarily.
Right. Yeah, and you can feel like a really, really good example for that is in health and physical fitness. I feel like a lot of people get into that comparison game, and this is getting a little bit off topic.
Mm-hmm.
Sorry, but I feel like so many people get into that comparison game where they look at themselves in the mirror, and then they look at somebody else, and they're like, why can't I be as thin as they are? Why can't I have as big of muscles as they do? And it's not just physical fitness either that people do that in. I see it
mental
all
ability.
over the place. People, why can't I be as smart as they are? Why can't I get as good at grades as they
Why
do?
can't I be as clever or good at arguing?
Yeah, why can't I make my sales quota like they did? And yeah, I see people get into that a lot, and it's not constructive, especially in the health and physical fitness area. It extremely destructive behavior to partake in, because you're comparing yourself to someone else.
Right.
And I think I mentioned this exact thing, but you don't see the work that they have put in. You don't see the amount of times they've had to wake up early and spend 2+ hours at the gym, or the amount of times they
Beat
didn't,
themselves up.
right, or the amount of time they had to deny going out with friends because they were going out to McDonald's, or
the amount of times it just felt like total crap because they felt like they fell short.
right, or the
whatever.
amount of mornings that they woke up and could barely move because they were so sore, and yet still got out of bed and went to the gym. I mean, there's countless things you can go over that you don't see, but all you see is the results.
Right. Right.
Sorry to get a little bit off topic.
No.
So coming back to being a team player, one question, I guess, if you're, this might be rooted in selfishness, I don't know, but it did occur to me at one point. Why should you be a team player?
Why should you be a team
Yeah,
player?
why shouldn't you just be in it for yourself?
I think you should be in it for yourself just as much as you should be in it for the team.
But why not just be in it for yourself?
Because it's my opinion, maybe it's more an opinion, but it's at least my opinion, that there's certain things that you can't achieve without a team. Teamwork makes a dream work. There's certain objectives that require a team effort because independently there's not enough there. If that makes sense. I mean, you look at the founding fathers of our country, and then when they rose up against the Brits and they came together and they developed an entire system of government, and they developed a constitution, and all those things, all the other things that they had to figure out. I don't think any of that could have ever happened if you just had a bunch of individuals isolated wanting to have a good life. I think it took a team of people to do that, to create what we have, just as an example. That's why I think you should be on a team.
That's a very good example, and you can use another example of in sports. I feel like I'm using a lot of sports examples, but
It's good.
it is what you think of when you think of a team, a sports team. At least that's what I think of.
I think it work. I don't want to call it work. Does it really work? I think of my
Colleagues, associates.
Yes, I think of my. Well, that's a good word for it. Labor vocation. No, that doesn't make any sense. My career. No, I don't know what to call it. It's not really work. Like
Your daily
there's work
activities?
sometimes, but yeah, I don't even know if work's because work kind of has like a naturally negative connotation. It's not like there's not work involved. Getting off topic. I think of what I do for a living. That's what I think of when I think of team.
Well, anyway, the thing that comes to mind for me is sports.
Mm-hmm.
And one of the first things you learn in just about every sport, but I played soccer, so one of the first things that you learn is the people ask you, what's the most important person on the field?
You. Me. No, I don't know. What's the
Well,
answer?
that's the answers you get. You get the goalie, me, or the referee, and the answer is your teammate.
Your teammate?
Because without a teammate, there's
No team.
you can't win without a teammate. The amount of times I have seen someone, one person, be, I'll use the term a ball hog, where they, as soon as they get the ball, everybody knows
They're keeping it.
they're not going to pass it to you. The only way you're getting it back is if the other team takes it and then you take it back.
Mm-hmm.
And it's you never win.
Mm-mm.
Never win. Not once do you win, because one person cannot take on 11.
Right. You got to have a bunch of people that are willing to put themselves aside. I understand. When you said that before the podcast, you're like, when you talk about being a team, are you talking about giving up everything and for the sake of the team? And I was like, man, that just sounds depressing. Like, I was hearing, give up your livelihood and sacrifice yourself.
Well,
But now that you mention it,
that wasn't my meaning behind it.
That's what I heard. I'm not saying that's what you said. But yeah, I guess there is some of that. When I think of a team, I think of like a group that's going to do something big, that one individual or even a group of individuals wouldn't be able to do on their own.
Mm-hmm.
As individuals. That's what I think. I don't think about giving stuff up, but yeah, there is sacrifice.
Exactly. That was a point I wanted to make, was that to be a team player, you do have to sacrifice.
Mm-hmm.
And sometimes it becomes the thing that you want most has to be sacrificed for the team to be successful.
Yeah, that's probably, when we talk about teamwork, one of the things I've got to work on. I don't like to deny myself. I've allowed myself too often to give in to my own selfish motivations and satisfactions. It's definitely something I could work on, is thinking more in everything. It's not like I completely disregard everybody. I mean, even a household. Household's a team. I know we had a team. We still do have a team. I'm just not part of it. For, when I was, everybody would wake up and get everybody ready for school, like everybody would make their own lunch. One person would make sandwiches. One person would help mom with my little brother with Down syndrome, one person would, if it was winter, one person would go out and warm the van up, like we all had our jobs. We got done, a half hour, boom, we're all up, ready to go and out the door. That was a team,
Sure was. Yeah, that's a great example, actually, of every person accepting their role, even if that role is minuscule.
Right, like, what was one of my jobs? In the wintertime, I usually was the person to warm up the van. And I think that's mostly because I didn't have to be around other people is why I wanted that. But like some people
I can still see how that might be miserable, though, especially if it's cold and it's just snowed. So you don't just have to warm up the van. You also have to clear off the snow and the ice that could be there. It could be miserable.
Yeah. Yeah, I can be lazy, but everybody has a job. I mean, I've just graduated, so I'm not part of that. But he had a job. Everybody had something that they did that
supported the family in a way.
Yep, and like we had work days. We still have work days. It's not like I don't participate in that, but like fall. When we'd rake up the leaves, we would have one person that would take the pile of leaves and put it in a trash can and drag it out to the street. And we'd have 2 or 3 people that would just rake them into piles, and stuff like that. Or when we were redoing our 3rd floor and we all had our hands in it, like there would be people that would just come in and this is just an example. They would beat the walls down, like all the lath and the plaster. They'd just come and they'd just start ripping it out, and then someone else would come and then make sure all the nails were pulled out from the lath. Someone else would just be putting it in buckets, and then someone else would go and take it outside, just as an example. Yeah, so there were plenty of team, I would call it, environments just in my family. Same with like dinner at night. Makes the food, and then someone else will for setting the table, and then we got one or two people that, go out and tell everybody, hey, it's dinner time, or whatever, Off track a little bit. Yeah, but what do you think you need to be better at as a team player? To put you on the spot.
To put me on the spot?
Yeah.
Okay. In general, what skill, or like in specifically what team that I'm a part of do I need to be better at?
Is there some commonality where you feel like you're falling short as a team player?
Yes.
Is your pride standing in your way?
Communication.
Communication.
Yes, that is I would say the most prevalent thing that I need to be better at is communicating what I'm trying to say better.
Okay.
In any situation that could be referred to as a team or a group,
or coordinating even efforts.
Yes, just to be more precise in my speech, and to be able to convey my ideas better, if you will. And I can use this podcast as an example. Sometimes it's what a week after our we record, all of a sudden we're like, oh, we have 1 week and we still haven't decided. It happened this week. We hadn't decided what topic we were going to do. We just kind of had to throw it together. I think our secretary, Mary, actually was the one who started it in our group chat, asking what our topic was going to be. And it made me realize even more, I guess, something that's been on my mind for a while, that I need to be better at communicating what I'm thinking, as opposed to just letting things slide more often than not.
Yeah. And that's one of the reasons I suggested this topic, was because, I see the utility of being a better team, along with the interest of the topic. I feel like I definitely am not good enough at communicating. I leave stuff too long hanging before I say something about it. I'm not good at, I'm very bad at getting back with people. Not always, but I could definitely be a lot better, like responding to texts but I don't think that's my biggest issue. I think my biggest issue is self-denial. I don't think I do a good enough job talking about exactly what you were talking about today, actually. Putting what I want aside, like giving up my time, being patient, or just maybe even sometimes just putting in the work. But I definitely could be a much better team player, and I think that's one of the things standing between me and personal improvement in general. Self-denial is something I've gotten worse at, I feel like, over the past 2 years. A lot less self-denial. I've just gotten lazy, and it's like, you want to give it to yourself.
Mm-hmm.
I've gotten in a bad habit of doing that recently. And overcommitting to stuff. It's like, just focus, coming up with, I want to actually, do a lot of stuff, but I can't commit to doing more than I'm capable of providing. Or, I've had it before where it's like I got like 3 or 4 weeks straight where I'm busy the entire time just filling commitments for people, and then I fall short in all these other areas. Like, I wasn't there to help my brother with his car. I fell behind with whatever, school, or my room became a total mess. Finding balance and focusing on the things I commit to, and just that, cutting out a lot of extra waste to time.
Mm-hmm. Well, that's one thing I've had to been focusing on, not to get off on too much of a tangent here, but
Go toot your horn. Okay.
I've scheduling, just trying to stop wasting so much time.
Man, it's not even necessarily like that I'm doing stuff that's like, oh, that's a waste of time. It's just like, yeah, but you got a bigger objective.
There's
you got
more
to focus
important
on.
things to be done.
Right.
There's far more important things that need to be done than whatever you're doing.
Fixing that person's lawnmower or whatever.
Correct.
Just as an example, not to, or, changing that person's brakes. Maybe you just got to say like, hey, can't do it. It depends on what your objective is. Like, what's the most important thing? Having enough money to meet your quota for your budget, and your savings goals. Is that what's most important? Then devote your time to that. How important is that? You know what I mean? Like,
right.
Bringing everything into balance. Not easy. Not easy. And in my opinion, it's always gonna keep, just from my experience. Maybe I'm wrong, but finding balance always, because it shifts always. And you think you're comfortable for 1 minute, and then stuff changes.
Right.
Finding balance.
You think you have a steady job, and all of a sudden a virus comes around and you're out of work.
Yeah, something like that.
Yeah, and that's just an example for like unforeseen factors that can come along that it's hard to prepare for them.
Right. Yeah, if I could just balance everything perfectly. If I could just be perfectly balanced, like, how great would that be? All the time? Well, it'd be too predictable. Then it'd be boring. But
exactly, because humans are built for the journey, not the destination.
Right. It's like finding balance between routine versus spontaneousness. Like, I feel like you need to be in the middle in a lot of things. You know what I mean? Like, you can't be 100%
right.
routine.
You have to have certain amounts of your day scheduled out that you're going to be doing whatever your state in life is. You're going to be at your job from this time to this time, or you're going to be at school from this time to this time, and then you're going to be doing homework, or you're going to be helping out around the house and whatever. But then you do have to have a certain amount of time, maybe a one weekend per month, or however you want to schedule it, where you can just say, I'm free. I get to
do whatever
I want to do. Yeah. I can go to the library or go to a museum.
Yeah, and then figuring out how much of that
Go on a
time do you
road
actually
trip.
how much of that time do I actually give to myself? That's the other thing. That's one thing I struggle with. Like, how much time should I actually give myself to not worry about stuff? Because a lot of times I'll wind up, just, I'll take it easy, and I'll take it real easy.
Yeah. I've fallen prey to that as well.
Because, like, when you want to take it easy, you got to take it easy. You can't half take it easy. You know what I mean? There's nothing worse than that. Like, you're
trying to take it easy, but at the same time being stressed about something.
Like, especially with school, that does not work.
No.
Like, you're either taking it easy, or you're not.
Or you're
because you're going to be worried about school.
At least the mindset I would think of is you're either, as you said, taking it easy, or you're sitting on the couch worrying about your assignment that isn't going to get done unless you do it right now.
Right, or like somebody asks you, this is an example, it's happened to me plenty of times. Somebody's like, hey, you want to hang out Sunday? And it's like, hey, that sounds like a lot of fun. Everybody's going bowling. I got schoolwork I should be doing. Then you go bowling. It's like, you're either going to forget about school and go bowling, which is what I would recommend doing if you're not going to leave, or you're going to sit there and be like, oh, I got the schoolwork to do, and it's just going to hang over you. I hate that. That's so annoying. Like, just be like, oh, that gives me such horrible anxiety, like having schoolwork due and knowing. You gotta just be like, no, like that was one thing I was definitely not good enough at. Like, nope, can't do it. No, there were plenty of times I did do that, but there were plenty of times it's like I feel obligated to hang out with them on top of maybe wanting to do it, but you just feel horrible when you go hang out with them because it's like, I should get home. I hate that.
Mm-hmm.
Cannot stand that.
Yeah, and it's a lot of unnecessary stress.
Mm-hmm. I think a lot of it's just coming up with a plan. Like, we got this time set up. Sometimes you just don't let stuff get in the way of it. It's like, I'm going to be working on schoolwork in that period.
I agree with you, especially when you're stressed the most. I'd say that's when you have to figure stuff out. You got to figure it out now before things get out of hand.
Right. And like give limits to how much you're gonna beat yourself up too. Like, okay, so yeah, 'cause if you don't have something specific you're aiming for, especially like with school, like I need an 85% or whatever. Like, you got to draw a line between where you have control and where you don't control. And a lot of times it's just preemptively coming to terms with, okay, I might get a C, but that's okay. This is all the time. We're here now. This is all the time I have to prepare for this test. So there's no changing that. So don't freak out when you see a C or whatever.
Right. And I think it's the same way. No matter what situation you're in, where where you have to look at it you have to see the full picture. That's the word I'm looking for. Phrase, sorry. That if you haven't studied for a test, for an exam even, and you go in there, you got to have some idea of how poorly you're going to do on that exam.
Right.
And you have to come to terms with that too. Right. In the same way that if you have a 5-page essay due in 2 hours, yeah, you can write something up to turn in to get something on it, but you're not going to get an A.
Right.
Unless you plagiarize it, in which case you probably won't get anything.
Right. And
short of a reprimand.
When I was in school, there were periods where I was just ridiculously busy. You know what? I would just weigh stuff out. Like, how good of a grade am I going to get on this assignment? I'm not going to aim any higher than that, you know what I mean? Like, factoring else in everything else, I'm only going to spend 4 hours on this on Sunday. And if that puts me at a B, or if, like, you know what I mean? You got to decide kind of how much it means to you in advance, If it's the most important thing, if your grade is your most important thing, then, go ahead, put all your time into it. But if you're like, there's other stuff too, well, then you just got to decide how far you're going to take it, what's acceptable, how much time do you need to put in to get to that point.
As Stephen Covey puts it, you have to decide what's important and what's urgent.
Mm-hmm. Yep. Yeah, because an assignment's urgent, and you feel that urgency of it being due tomorrow, how important is it really?
I think you're absolutely correct, Daniel. You do have to decide what your priorities are. Well, thank you for joining us in this episode on teamwork, where we've talked about the traits of a team player, team leadership. We related that to the military. We talked about what the differences between a team player and team leader, what's required of each, and reasons why you should be a team player.
Yeah, I think there's plenty more to talk about, but I think we went over a lot of useful content, and we hit on a few specific points that I could really apply, at least in my own life, and we could even apply on this podcast. I know for me, the mentioning of putting yourself aside, and thinking about the team is something I could definitely practice more. So yeah, I enjoyed the talk. Thank you for talking with me.
Oh, you're very welcome. I enjoyed it thoroughly as well, and I was glad to have another informal conversation.
Well, thank you all for joining us also. We appreciate any feedback you might have for us, any comments. We're open to hear. We have a Facebook page and an Instagram page at The Root of Knowledge, and we also have a YouTube channel now, so feel free to go check that out. As always, we hope you learned something, or at least we encourage you to think a little bit. All right, you guys have a great one. Bye-bye.